Welcome everybody to the February meeting of our nonprofit plant-based nutrition organization of Wisconsin. I'm your host, Terry Lynch. The mission of our nonprofit group is to educate, inspire, and support each other on an evidence-backed, whole plant food-based nutritional path for health and improved quality of life. It's a mouthful. Our group is open to everyone, those plant-based and those just curious about it. It's meant to be a non-judgmental place for people to come, get information, inspiration, and support. If you'd like more information about our group, our upcoming meeting dates, speakers and resources, or to just check out our videos of our past meeting, just Google us at pbnow.org. That's pbnow.org. As we do each time, can I see a show of hands, either by raising your hands or using the thumbs up icon, to show how many of you are currently following a plant-based lifestyle? It's popping up there. That's good. I'd say that's a quarter to maybe a third. Excellent. As we mentioned at the beginning of each meeting, the evidence of the benefits of plant-based nutrition in improving health and quality of life for people of all ages, as published in non-biased medical research, is quite striking. Whether it's improving health through increased energy, weight loss, preventing, slowing, stopping, or reversing problems like allergies, digestive problems, diabetes, heart disease, and early dementia, or increasing our quality of life by helping us feel better quickly, strengthening our immune system, increasing our endurance, improving athletic performance, speeding recovery from exercise, reducing joint pain, clearing thinking, or reducing the physical, emotional, and financial side effects of the illnesses, drugs, and procedures often recommended to treat the conditions plant-based nutrition can help us avoid. The research shows that our bodies do a wonderful job of healing themselves if we stop damaging them daily with poor nutrition and start giving them the nutrition that they need to heal and function optimally. It is truly remarkable. Now, let me tell you what's in store for you tonight. Tonight, we'll hear from three speakers, I'm sorry. First, we'll hear some comments from our PB Now Medical Director, Dr. Joshua Liberman. And following Dr. Liberman, we'll hear about plant-based shopping from Ann Esselstyn and Brian Hart. Our program should end at 7:30. As a reminder, we have meetings every month, usually on the second Thursday of the month, excuse me, at 6 p.m. Central Time. Excuse me, I swallowed some nuts before I started talking, and they haven't completely gone down. Next month, we'll hear from Florida cardiologist, Dr. Kushik Reddy. We'll be posting more information about our upcoming meetings on our website, pbnow.org. You can find more information about our upcoming meetings there. You can register on our website, or if you're already registered, you'll receive email reminders of our events as they approach. A quick technical note, during the meeting, everyone but the speakers will be muted, and we ask that you stay muted to avoid background noise and to allow everyone to hear the speakers. We should have a Q&A at the end, and we'll use the chat box or the icons, and then I'll ask you to unmute to ask questions if you choose to do that at that point. Now, before I introduce our first speaker, let me take a couple minutes here to touch on a topic. Most of you growing up probably remember the food pyramid and other iterations of the government's dietary guidelines. The federal government has provided dietary advice for the public for more than 100 years through bulletins, posters, brochures, books, and more recently, websites and social media. Dietary guidance generally included advice about what to eat and drink for better health. As an example, guidelines for good eating in the 1950s relied on 7 basic food groups. 2 or more servings of milk per day were suggested, as well as 2 servings each of fruits and vegetables. At least 1 serving of meat or cheese was put in there, as well as a minimum of 3 to 5 eggs per week. By the way, can anybody guess what the 7th food group was? The 7th food group was butter and fortified margarine. Our mothers, the school district lunch programs, hospital menus, and many other things were influenced by these guidelines. And it's a good reason that most of us grew up thinking meat, fish, eggs, milk, and cheese were healthy. These guidelines were put together by the agriculture department, and it turns out there was an inherent conflict of interest. For years, or one of the agriculture department's principal missions was to promote U.S. agricultural products. For years, the committee who put together the guidelines had been and continues to be influenced by the large agricultural lobbies, like the Dairy Association, the Cattlemen's Association, and the Egg Board. In fact, many of the people who sit on the committee to this day, the committee that decides on the guidelines, have been funded in one way or another by these large commercial agricultural groups. Through the help of advocates like the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, the True Health Initiative, Dr. Michael Greger, and others, the guidelines have begun to move in a healthier direction that's more reflective of actual nutritional science, although there's a good way to go. These dietary guidelines are drawn up every 5 years, and one of our members pointed out that they are beginning to work on the 2025 guidelines. For any of you who may be interested in following what's going on or even in participating, there are ways to do this. And I'd like to ask Warren to unmute himself to give us a 60-second summary and put the relevant information into the chat box too, for anybody who may have an interest. Warren?
All right. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Turn it down. You're fine down. Terry, thanks so much for giving me a little bit of time. There's, as Terry said, the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, together with the U.S. Department of Health, are underway putting together the dietary guidelines for 2025. And what I'm going to talk real briefly about is how we can all get involved. There is a web page where you can make public comments to the committee. You can also register to attend any of the committee's meetings, and you can also just ask to be kept informed of the committee's progress. I'm going to drop all those links into the chat in just a little while so everyone has the opportunity to do that. I just want to stress, and Terry touched on this, that for us to be involved in this process is critical for a lot of reasons. Just today I looked at the biographies, the quick little one-paragraph biographies of each of the 20 members of this committee. None of them seems to be affiliated with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. None of them in their bios say anything about whole plant-based nutrition. And the chair of the committee is a director of a USDA research center. And as Terry mentioned, USDA still works to promote the meat and dairy industry. So this, even though, as Terry said, we have had some success in steering the guidelines in the plant-based direction, there's a long way to go. The current food plate still has a big spot for dairy, and then the rest of the plate has some food groups, and then it just has protein, which is not a food group, it's a nutrient. And so the food plate doesn't make sense. And so I believe our guidance is really, really necessary. So once again, you can make comments to this committee, you can be kept appraised of their progress, and you can even virtually attend any of the committee's meetings. So I'll drop all that information in the chat, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about that, Terry.
Well, thanks so much, Warren, for bringing that to our attention. And for somebody who may have an interest in just getting a few minutes of this, if you go to, I'm trying to think of on YouTube, there are a few examples of Dr. Greger speaking to the committee the last time that they went around, and it's a real good presentation. And there are a couple of the nutritionfacts.org videos talking about this. One of them, he specifically goes through a number of years of committee members who were involved in putting this together, and then highlights their affiliations with the Egg Board or the Dairy Association or this, that, or the other thing. And it's just jaw-dropping. Like I say, our parents, our school districts, they all bought into this. They thought that this was based on this is the healthy way to eat, when in fact it was a combination of something like that, but a lot of promotion of dairy, of meat, of eggs, things like that, due to the lobbying, just like anything else in Washington. So with that, thanks again, Warren, and let's go to our first speaker. Our first speaker, is a fellowship-trained cardiologist. He's president and CEO of Wisconsin Cardiology Associates. He's a past president and current trustee of the Wisconsin chapter of the American College of Cardiology. He's a member of the American College of Cardiology's National Nutrition and Lifestyle Work Group, whose membership includes nationally known physicians such as Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Neil Bernard, and a family member of our featured speakers, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. He's an advocate for the use of plant-based nutrition to help improve heart health, general health, and quality of life, and has seen the benefits of plant-based nutrition in both his personal life and that of his patients. We're fortunate to have him here in Milwaukee and as our medical director. With that, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Joshua Libran.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate the introduction as always. Thanks everybody for being here on this call. We got a nice large group for the Esselstyn Foundation, which is amazing. And obviously we're going to hear a lot of good things from them. As you all know, I like to just, update the group about my reading and my experience in my practice as a cardiologist that promotes plant-based lifestyle and has seen really beneficial effects among my patients and for myself too. And so I guess I wanted to actually I was actually thinking about this, a similar topic to what Warren and Terry were just talking about how a lot of the guideline recommendations and the societies that have produced these guidelines or have promulgated them have really over the years had conflicts of interest, right? Where they receive a large amount of support from Coca-Cola or the Beef Board or dairy, or one of these kind of organizations, or people, are researchers, sure, but a large part of their funding comes from one of these organizations. And so you always have to question whether there's some kind of implicit or inherent bias in them. And one of the research studies that I wanted to talk about, or the research study I wanted to talk about today, was actually published in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology, which is the main publication for the National Lipid Association, the NLA, which I'm a member of the NLA. I'm a lifetime member of the NLA, and I think that they do a lot of wonderful things. But I've always been a little bit concerned about their relationships with the pharmaceutical industry. They do, they host a lot of conferences. They host a lot of educational talks, which I think are wonderful. Over the majority of them are really wonderful. And I think that the services they provide far outweigh any detraction or cons or anything like that. But they get a lot of support from pharmaceutical companies, and so as a result of that, many of the articles that come out in the journal and many of their recommendations involve the use of medications. Now, again, I'm not anti-medicine at all in any way, but I would like to see some more articles about the role that nutrition can have on health and of course wellness. And so I was pleasantly surprised to see an article it's not the most recent journal, because unfortunately I have a stack of them this high because I've been busy with some other things, and so I haven't been able to get through them. But I've been working on them, trying to read one a night. And this was an article called "The Effectiveness of Medical Nutrition Therapy in the Management of Adult Dyslipidemia," and it was a meta-analysis. So it looked at all the different studies that are out there, and it's not a really well-studied subject, but it looked at all the research that was out there, and it kind of compiled them into this one article, and it was the lead article in this journal, which again, to me, is a lot, because as I said, because of the focus on medications. Now, again, I want to defend the NLA just in a little bit. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of pharmaceutical companies, but a lot of the articles are written on rare conditions or whatnot that maybe nutritional therapy lifestyle isn't going to be the most effective in. People with really genetically abnormal cholesterol levels, sure, they can get themselves healthier and they'll be doing themselves a lot of good by working on their lifestyle, but they're not going to normalize their cholesterol numbers. I mean, they're just genetically, extremely abnormal. And you need medications for that. And you need research pushing the boundaries to try to see what other ways we could attack cholesterol that will help save lives. But that's a very small population of patients who have these really weird or abnormal syndromes. And while it's important to know about mechanisms and try to treat those, because then you can potentially apply those to the greater population, I still think that we need to be speaking more about lifestyle, about diet, about nutrition, about exercise, because that's going to benefit a wider swath of people even, but also it will help lower risk for cancer, lower risk for diabetes, not just fixing the cholesterol, right? And that's an important point about nutrition, about diet, about plant-based health, these kinds of things, that it doesn't just work on cholesterol. But regardless, as I said, this article looked at medical nutrition therapy, and what they define that is basically any study that looked at an intervention where they either had a registered dietitian give advice, and again, we can quibble about whether what the advice they're giving, but they're at least trying to educate people about better things to eat. So they looked at studies where a registered dietitian was giving advice to one group and not another group, or was focusing on moving people towards a Mediterranean diet versus a regular diet. This was not a plant-based study, right? This was not a plant-based study, but I think we can learn something about the value of nutrition from this, because as I said, most registered dietitians are not plant-based. They're not teaching people, they're not educating people to move towards plant-based. They're just trying to move them from the typical horrible, standard American diet into a more moderate diet. Now, again, I think we should be over here and not necessarily here. But boy, if we could move all these people at least into the middle, we'd have a lot fewer heart attacks. We'd have a lot fewer cases of diabetes. We'd have a lot fewer cases of cancer, right? And so this is just talking to people about moving them from this to the middle, to a more moderate diet. And so what are the things the studies that they looked at in this meta-analysis looked at, telling people to reduce their saturated fat. Well, guess what? If you eat a plant-based diet, you're going to have a remarkably low saturated fat intake, almost probably zero, unless you're eating, palm oil or coconut oil or things like that. They talked about people moving to a Mediterranean diet. Again, what's a Mediterranean diet? But it's the majority of the diet is plant-based. Sure, they talk about lean meats in it, but again, you're moving people to a diet that's majority plant-based. Talk about reducing carbohydrate intake, especially of the simple starches and the simple carbs. So these are things that if you just take them another step further, you're going to get into the plant-based world. But at least we're moving people, in the right direction. And what did we see with this meta-analysis? That when they combined all these different studies, and it was I lost the number here, but it was a couple dozen studies that they looked at, and compared to the usual care or no intervention, medical nutrition therapy, medical nutrition education lowered total cholesterol by about 20 points, lowered LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, by 12 points, lowered triglycerides by 32 points, lowered systolic blood pressure by almost 9 points, 9 millimeters of mercury. These things if you do them on a large population scale, would save millions of lives, right? And again, we're not even moving people into the plant-based category. We're just moving them into a better diet. But if you just follow the trends, if we can lower triglycerides by 32 points, and if we can lower blood pressure by almost 10 points just by moving them to the middle, just think of how the good we can do by moving them even more, right? So I think what I take from that is honestly the power of nutrition, because we're not even telling people how to eat, how to truly eat healthy. We're just moving them, as I said, into a more moderate diet, and yet we could save millions of lives. I mean, if you could lower blood pressure by 9 to 10 points, holy cow! I mean, that'd be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of strokes prevented each year. So one is just the power of small nutritional changes. For the people that didn't raise their hand on this call that are not yet plant-based or are thinking about it or haven't made, the plunge yet, even small baby steps are going to make a huge difference. And that's what we're seeing in that study. The second major point from this I take is it was the lead article in this journal that mostly focuses on medications to fix cholesterol. And so I've said it before, I'll keep saying it. I do think the tide is turning. I do think that more and more, there's more organizations out there like the ACLM, you were saying, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is teaching putting out a free course to teach doctors about how to eat healthier. You just see more and more acceptance in the medical field of this kind of approach. And so I really do think that the future is bright. I also like to give a little talk about an anecdote that I saw in the office, and I'm just going to quickly talk about something, which is that I saw a patient last week who said that he used to be vegetarian, but he's moved away from it because he had trouble finding meat substitutes that were organic. Right, his big holdup is that he only wants to eat organic foods, and it was really hard for him to find. His examples were like Impossible Burgers or Boca Burgers or Beyond Burgers or these kinds of the fake meat kind of things that were organic. And so we had a little bit of a conversation. He's convinced, and I think he still is, that organic is necessary. I'm certainly not convinced. I'd rather have somebody eating healthier than eating organic, right? And so you can have an organic piece of steak. I don't think it's healthy just because it's organic. I'd rather have you eat non-organic beans, right? And so we had a little bit of a conversation, and I guess the message I want to give is one of those situations where don't cut off your nose to spite your face kind of situations where I don't want people to get held up with, well, it has to be this or it has to be that, and so therefore you miss the forest for the trees. You miss, or that you're so focused on kind of small minutia. And we've talked about this before, whether you should eat oils or not, or nuts or not, or these kinds of things. That the key is making the majority, if not all, of your diet plant-based is going to be a much healthier way to be. And so my personal take, message is, I certainly think that I'd rather eat healthier than eat organic. And I'd rather have, the people on this call eating healthier, eating plant-based foods rather than focusing on organic. And if you can't get organic, then you're going to go back to eating meat. So with that, appreciate you guys all being on the call. And I'm actually, I guess that's a good segue into the Esselstyn Foundation for how to shop for things that are plant-based, because when you can't find things, that you want to necessarily, that you're fixated on, you have to have a little bit of flexibility, and I'm excited to learn about how to do that.
Great. Oh, thanks, Josh. It's outstanding to hear that article was the lead article, and it's in one of the more respected journals, and that tide hopefully is turning, and it's a little bit of an ad too for, I'm trying to remember if it's May, I think. Somebody's going to be speaking who Dr. Lieberman knows, Dr. Andrew Freeman, who will be going over the whole past year's worth of research, nutritional research on plant-based nutrition. So he is a very fast talker who can...
He packs a lot in.
Yeah, he packs a lot in, and I've got to think we'll probably go over 40 or 50 studies during that period of time that are recent studies. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Josh. And let me introduce our featured speakers tonight, Ann Esselstyn and Brian Hart. Ann Esselstyn is a relentlessly energetic and creative advocate for the plant-based whole food way of life. She's devoted herself to inventing recipes to prevent and reverse heart disease in support of the research of her husband, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. She's the author of the recipe section of Dr. Esselstyn's best-selling book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. She's co-author of the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease cookbook with her daughter, Jane Esselstyn. Ann is a graduate of Smith College with a master's in education from Wheelock College. She taught English and history for 27 years while raising 4 children at the same time. When not in the kitchen, Ann counsels patients, lectures around the world on how to prepare and eat plant-based foods, and spends time with her many, and Ann and Brian could probably tell how many plant-based grandchildren. And that doesn't mean they're excluding the non-plant-based grandchildren. That means every grandchild is plant-based.
10.
10. Thanks, Brian.
All plant-based.
All plant-based. By the way, if any of you saw, and if you saw the email that we sent out talking about the meeting tonight, that had the picture of the Esselstyn family out on a porch, a very healthy, happy-looking family. Everybody in that picture is plant-based. Brian is executive director, or also speaking to us will be Brian, and Brian is Ann's son-in-law, being married to Ann and Dr. Esselstyn's daughter, Jane. And he is also the executive director of the Esselstyn Family Foundation. He's an experienced educator with over 25 years in the field as a teacher, administrator, and consultant. In addition, he's a former plant-based chef. When not educating others about the benefits of whole food plant-based nutrition, he's a committed ultra endurance athlete with 4 Ironman finishes to his name, among other run, bike, and ski events. Tonight, Ann and Brian will be talking to us about plant-based shopping. It's a pleasure to welcome our featured speakers, Ann Esselstyn and Brian Hart. Ann and Brian.
All right. Terry, thank you so much. It's so great to be here. And thanks, Dr. Lieberman, for setting us up for a further conversation. And I hope everybody's ready to get into the weeds here on label reading and what we all mean when we talk about looking for products that fit the label of what it means to be truly whole food plant-based. So as Terry said, I'm the executive director of the Esselstyn Foundation. We are a 501c3 public charity that seeks to prevent and reverse lifestyle-related diseases through, no surprise, the whole food plant-based nutrition. And so we give all of our programming away for free. So if any of you out there have connections to other nonprofits or community organizations and you'd like us to present to you on plant-based eating, please reach out through our website or through Terry. If you want to get in touch with Terry, he knows how to get in touch with us. We're happy to present, and we'll, as we say, if you fill the room with plant-based or people that are interested in plant-based eating or learning more about it, we'll happily talk to them about it. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So here we go. Hopefully it'll work. It's not letting me, Terry. Let me see here. Oh, there we go.
All right. Yes, there we go.
All right. Label reading. I'm going to start off with label reading, and then Ann's going to give you her, Ann is the is one of the founders of the sort of the current plant-based movement. She and her husband, Dr. Esselstyn, and I know many of you know who they are. You've heard them speak. And Ann is going to fill all this in and talk about some of her sort of tricks and secrets and things that she's discovered over the years. I mean, I like to think back to those days when Ann and Essie in 1983 decided to become plant-based eaters. And I like to, you think about that. That's pre-internet, that's pre-Whole Foods, that's before really much of the nation was really onto this whole plant-based thing. And so they really had to work hard to be plant-based. They had to go to this strange health food store on the west side of Cleveland and try to figure out, what to buy and where to get nutritional yeast and things like that. And so we really are very lucky these days. It's so much easier to be plant-based, but still there are a lot of traps out there. So tonight I'm going to talk about label reading, which is one of the most important skills you can develop as a plant-based eater. All right, so let's get started here. So why become a skilled a skilled label reader. And really what you're talking about is it's learning how to separate the junk from the real food in a matter of a few seconds. By applying a handful of fast and simple rules, navigating the grocery store can actually be quite simple. And as Anne will tell you over and over again during her segment, it is so important to read labels, especially now because of this onslaught of vegan junk food that's out there. Vegan does not always mean healthy. And that's what's so troubling these days, is that the food industry has come to realize that people are interested in plant-based eating. And of course, they've flooded the market with all these products that are not healthy. And I'll talk about why, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And Anne will especially show you some of the traps that even she's fallen into if she's not careful to read labels, because we're all, it's always a process for all of us. So ultimately, I want to start out by just reminding everybody, I know I'm preaching to the choir to some degree, but ultimately, what foods do we seek as whole food plant-based eaters? So of course, we want vegetables of all kinds. We want people to eat the rainbow, as we say in the Esselstyn Foundation, especially leafy greens. Leafy greens are incredibly rich in phytonutrients and have been shown to actually be able to spark nitric oxide production, which is what allows our vessels to dilate, as many of you know. Fruit, and that means frozen or fresh. We love those. We love fruit, intact whole grains. So, and I'll talk a lot about in a moment about what whole versus, just wheat flour is and things like that. So we're talking here about brown rice and oats and quinoa, farro, bulgur, polenta, all these amazing whole grains that are full of all this fiber and all these great vitamins and minerals. It's really the foundation of so much of what we eat. And when we're talking about breads and pastas and tortillas, we're really talking about 100% whole grain. I'll get into the details on that in a moment. We want to try to avoid breads, pastas, and tortillas that have added oils. And that's a tough one. That's a tough one to navigate. Anne will show us some of her favorite brands. And so you can jot all that down, or we can put it into the chat box as well. Legumes, we want you to eat lots of legumes. There are over 100 different types of legumes in the world. We focus a lot on black beans and lentils and pinto beans, chickpeas. We love oil-free hummuses, lots of legumes in our lives. Plant garnishes. Now, these are things that you don't want to overdo, but you certainly can use, and we call them garnishes. Use them to add a little bit of flavor and depth to some of the things. So avocados, you got to be careful about, walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, plant-based milks, and dried fruit. So you can use them, but just be careful not to overdo it, just because there are a lot of have a high fat or sugar content. And simple beverages. We want you to focus on water, tea, decaf coffee, and alternative milks for your cereal. So this is what we want you to eat. So what do we want you to avoid when we're speaking generally about our approach to whole food plant-based nutrition? So really what we're talking about, again, is, we're avoiding meat of any kind. As Dr. Esselstyn says, if it has a mother or a face, you want to avoid it. There's lots of reasons for that, but I'm sure you've heard it before. Dairy products, one of the number one source of saturated fat in the American diet is dairy products. Cheese, the number one. Milk, yogurt, butter. Eggs, we don't like eggs because of their high cholesterol content. Extracted oils, olive oil, coconut oil, canola oil, corn oil. This is where Dr. Esselstyn gets some pushback from some of the people in the plant-based world, worried about, how much healthy oil is there such thing as a healthy oil and all that. And you have to remember, Dr. Esselstyn works with a lot of really sick people who've had multiple stents, a number of bypasses and things like that. And so he really does not want them eating any added fat. This is not a no fat diet. This is a no added fat diet. We want to make sure we clarify that. Refined breads, baked goods, and pastas. Usually when you have white flour, you stripped all the fiber off the hull. And so that's just, your body almost reads white flour almost like sugar. We want to avoid excess sugars. We want to avoid excess fat. And we want to avoid excess salt. So we're going to get into those numbers in a moment, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So again, we're focusing on whole foods. We want foods that in most cases are as close to their natural state as possible, fresh or frozen. I mentioned when we're looking at breads and pastas, we want to make sure that you're looking for terms like rolled, whole, cracked, or stone ground in the ingredients. That means they're 100% whole. A lot of tricky food companies will put wheat flour in things, and then they'll just dye it with molasses to make the bread look dark, but it's not a whole grain. They've actually put white flour in there and just dyed it a different color with the molasses, or just with food dye. As well, we want you to embrace, as I mentioned, all the whole grains like brown rice and millet and quinoa. There's so many vitamins and minerals and fiber in those things. So calorie density is another thing that we're watching out for. And so for those of you who've seen my previous talk, calorie density is something we talk about quite a bit at the Esselstyn Foundation, because a lot of the people we're working with are trying to lose weight. As you know, close to 60% of the people in this country are overweight or obese. It's a huge issue in our nation, and a lot of comorbidities come along with obesity, as Dr. Lieberman, I'm sure, will attest. So we want to stick to foods that have a lower calorie density. The good news is you can eat a lot of low calorie density foods and get really full, and you won't gain much weight you won't gain weight because it's full of a lot of fiber and a lot of water. So here's just a basic example just to wrap your head around it. One strawberry is 4 calories, and none of those calories are from fat. A potato is about 150 calories. You don't get any of those calories from fat. Now look at this. A tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories. 100% of those calories come from fat. And then one Starbucks mocha frappuccino is 500 calories. That's 25% of your daily caloric intake if you're having a Starbucks mocha frappuccino. So that's a great example of calorie density. We want to stick to the strawberry and the potatoes. We don't want to add oil to our food. It's just a lot of hidden calories, not to mention the fact that it damages endothelial function. So that's just a great example here. Here's a little graphic. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. If you eat, this is what 500 calories looks like. If you eat 500 calories of oil, you're not very full. If you eat 500 calories of cheese, it's about a fifth full. If you eat 500 calories of meat, maybe you're almost half full. But look, if you eat 500 calories of potatoes, rice, and beans, you're almost completely full. And then fruits and vegetables, you can eat a lot of to get to 500 calories. When we talk about drinking, as I mentioned, we want to stick to water. A lot of Americans get between 400 and 700 calories on average per day from liquid sources. And so all that sweetened tea and wine and beer and mixed drinks and milk and fruit juice and sodas and flavored waters and coffee with lots of cream and sugar and energy drinks and smoothies are loaded with extra calories. We are right now working with an organization out of Phoenix, Arizona, that's working with underserved populations in Phoenix. And one of the biggest things they're having a hard time wrapping their heads around is things like energy drinks or things like Gatorade or Powerade. Those are chock full of so much sugar, so much fructose. And they really are having a hard time because they're so wed to them. They just don't like the taste of water. And so it's really quite an interesting conversation. I've shown this slide to this group before if you were on previous, but here's just an example of what someone might take in a day in liquid form, 848 calories in a day. And we want to limit the big 3. We want to be careful about salt, sugar, and fat. We say minimal salt, minimal sweet, and we want to keep our fat calories low, and I'll show you all the numbers on that. We know this, but the food industry knows this too, and that's why they pump all this salt, sugar, and fat into our food to get us addicted to those foods. They have no interest in your health. The food industry is very interested in your money, and so that is why they make those foods, again, packed with the things that we know our bodies need, but we don't need them in the amounts that we eat them in. Most Americans consume about 30 to 50% of their daily calories from fat. We want to get that down to like 10 or 15%. All right, so now we can dive into labels, now that I've kind of laid out the foundation of what we're talking about when we talk about whole food plant-based. So the first rule of label reading is never, ever, 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 ever trust the front of the box. You're going to see all kinds of stickers and things on the front of boxes or little seals of approval, whether it's non-GMO or 100% vitamin C or sugar-free or fat-free. Never, ever trust that label on the front. A lot of times it's a lot of hoo-ha. And even though it might be true, they've probably manipulated it to not be so true. And so if you dive into this on the internet, you can find so many examples of actually foods, including brands that come out of companies like Whole Foods, where they aren't even honest, really. They'll say, something's fat-free, but the reason they can say that is just the way they manipulate the numbers. And I'm sure many of you know that that milk, milk, one of the great examples of mislabeling in food is milk is often used, milk called like 2% milk. And so many of us think, oh, well, that means it's only 2% fat. That's actually not true at all. It's actually close to 40% fat because they're doing it by weight. So they've manipulated it. And it's very interesting if you look into that. All right, so let's talk about the Esselstyn Foundation rules for reading labels. So here's what we do. When we look at a label, the first thing we look for is calories from fat. Now, the new food labels, I'm going to show you an example of a new food label in a moment. This is one of the old ones, the old food labels, which made it really easy. You can see it actually lists calories from fat right at the top. So there's 100 calories and then calories from fat 10. What we want is for your calories from fat compared to total calories to be 25% or less per serving. We even want it actually to be below 20%, but we're being a little liberal here because I'll show you some math in a moment that we're going to kind of fudge up. So we say 25% or less. So this is actually quite easy math to do when you see 10%, you see calories from fat 10, calories 100, we know that's 10%. That makes it really easy. So we know this product is actually under 25% calories. So the easy way to do it is just take calories from fat and multiply by 4, and then you see. So you see that this is actually this product's okay. When we're looking at sodium, we want to make sure that there is a 1-to-1 ratio of sodium to total calories. So you can see here on this product, sodium 10 milligrams and calories 100. So that's great. So we could actually, in our set of rules, we could manage 100 milligrams of sodium to 100 calories, and that's still safe. So this product is actually quite low in sodium. So we like that. We also, when we're looking at ingredients, and I'll show you some examples in a moment, we want to look for things that are 100% whole grain. As I mentioned, we're going to look for words like cracked, whole, rolled, or stone ground. Sweeteners. When it comes to sweeteners, when you're looking at ingredients, you want to make sure that in the first 3 ingredients, there isn't any sugar. Sugar cane, cane syrup. A lot of sugars actually are hidden and they'll be listed in multiple ways in ingredients, and anything with an OSE on the end, fructose, sucrose, all those are sweeteners. So you don't want that to be one of the first 3 ingredients. And last but not least, you want to make sure there isn't any oil added, shortening. Again, high fructose corn syrup, eggs, milk, butter. Casein is a milk protein, meat, poultry, and fish. So again, to review quickly, the really easy ones are calories from fat, less than 25%, sodium in a 1-to-1 ratio to total calories. So if sodium is 10 milligrams, as it is here, and your calories is 100, that's great. That's really low sodium, only 10%. Sweeteners, again, we don't want them to be in the first 3 ingredients, and we want to skip any addition of oil, corn syrup, eggs, milk, butter, casein, meat, poultry, fish. Okay, here are some examples. This will start to make it a little clearer. The old label, the new labels are on the right, the old labels on the left. As I mentioned, reading the old labels is easy because they actually list calories from fat. So in this case, 110 calories and calories from fat is 20. So we like that. That's below 25%. Sodium, 20 milligrams to 110 calories. So I'm again comparing the 20 milligrams to 110 calories. Perfect. That's far below our 1-to-1 ratio. So we like this product, whatever it is. I don't even remember what this product is. Now on the new labels, you got to do a little math. I know you probably didn't sign up for any math tonight, but you got to do a little math on the new labels because they don't list calories from fat right on the label. You actually have to do a little calculation. And so the way to do that is, they list total calories, but then when you look at the line that says total fat, it lists it in grams. And many of you may know this, but there are about 9 calories in a gram of fat. To make it easy, because I was an English and history major, I'm not very good at math, so I just do it by 10, makes it easy. So if I did it by 9, it's about 20, that would be about 22 calories from fat. I'm going to do it by 10 just because I don't like to have to do hard math, 25. And so you'll see it's still under our 25%. So we like this as it's the same product. And then our sodium I mentioned before. So again, once again, just to reiterate, in case you missed it, just take total fat in grams and the new labels and just multiply by 10. That makes it 25. And then decide what's the percentage of total calories. Right? Pretty straightforward. That's just an easy one. All right, let's take a look at some real live products here. All right, Triscuits. When I first became plant-based, I used to love Triscuits. Triscuits were one of the, and then, you know, of course, on the front of the label, look, it says 100% whole grain. We don't believe anything on the front of the box. No GMOs. Okay, I'm not a big GMO fan, but okay, it feels good. 100% of the grain is whole grain. We like that. We're drawn into this, but let's take a look at the calories. Let's do our little math equation here. Total fat, 35 grams. Excuse me, 3.5 grams. Multiply roughly by 10, 35. Is that more than 25% of total calories? Yes, it is. Sodium, check this out. So if total calories is 120, we're looking at sodium amounts, 160 milligrams. Is that more than 120? Do we have a 1-to-1 ratio? No, we don't. So it's a lot of sodium. Now let's take a look at the ingredients. Ingredients, whole grain wheat. We like that. It says whole grain. Now look at the second ingredient, vegetable oil. And then in parentheses, soybean or canola oil and sea salt. We don't like that. That concerns us. So darn, Triscuits. I used to love those things. So good. All right, let's take a look at wheat thins. Another one of these things that can get people think, oh, it's got whole grain on the front or something. And so let's take a look at the label. Total fat, 3.5 out of 120. So we multiply 3.5 by 10, 35. So is that more than 25%? Yes, it is. Sodium, look at that, 200 milligrams. Is that more than 120 to break our 1-to-1 ratio? Yes, it is. A lot of sodium. Look at our ingredients, whole grain wheat, flour, sugar. So sugar is the the second ingredient. Canola oil is the third. Then we've got malt syrup, which is another type of sugar. And then the refiner's syrup. So that's probably some other sweetener. So we've got lots of different sugars in that label. Okay, Amy's organic stuff. This is one of those, how we say, well, what about Amy's? People who go plant-based, as Dr. Lieberman said, if you need this as a stepping stone, okay, but just be careful and make sure you, again, become a label reading ninja. Let's take a look at total calories, total fat is, this is one of the old labels. So this actually makes it easy. So total fat, so 9 grams, we would multiply that by 10, 90, but actually it's really 9, so roughly 80 calories from fat. Is that more than 25%? Yes, it is. Look at sodium. Soups are incredible when it comes to sodium. 680 milligrams of salt to our 280 calories. That's far beyond our 1-to-1 ratio. We don't like this. So I'm sorry, Amy's. You make some really interesting products, but we can't eat them. All right, here's a great one. I love this example. This was one I found recently. Look at the front of this box. This just shows you exactly why you can never believe anything on the front of the box. So it says, I mean, not that some of these things aren't true, but it's sucking you in. It's making you feel as if it's a healthy product. So Get Back to Human, what a great brand name. Wow, that's interesting. No refined starches. It's paleo plant-based, no greasy fingers, no gluten or grains, no sunflower oil. Et cetera, no seed vegetable oils, no refined starches. So, wow, you're probably looking at this box saying, this has got to be healthy. Well, let's take a look. Let's do our math here. So 120 calories, total fat, 7 grams. We multiply that by roughly 10. Is that more than 25%? Absolutely. 70 out of 120. Sodium, 300 milligrams. Look at the calories, 120. That's far blows away our 1-to-1 ratio. What's in it? So there's all this great stuff in it. Grain-free flour blend, almond cassava, and organic coconut. There's all this really great stuff. We're going down. Organic coconut aminos are actually okay. But look, we get to the bottom. organic rosemary, organic coconut oil. I don't know if many of you know much about coconut oil, but it is one of the most saturated fats on the planet, even more than butter. So anybody who tells you that coconut oil is healthy has not looked at all of what's behind it. Coconut oil, the Harvard Health Newsletter has a whole article you can look up online about the dangers of coconut oil and the fact that there's so much saturated fat. So be careful. Okay, Brian, how about some good examples? It's time. I can't depress everybody. Here's one. Here's a great dipping cracker for a hummus you might make at home. Wasa, which is a brand that's been around for a long time. They make a multi-grain, whole grain crisp bread. And of course, we're going to look at the front of the box. It says non-GMO, 12 grams of whole grains, 35 calories per slice. Okay, sounds good. Looks pretty healthy. It's got a nice little picture there. Let's take a look at the ingredients. Total fat, 0, actually. Wow, that's great. Total, each cracker is about 35 calories. Calories from fat, 0. Sodium, 65. So sodium is a little high for my liking. However, I do eat these on occasion. And so I'm not going to sweat that the milligrams of sodium is a little bit high. It's not like some of the other products we looked at where the sodium was triple or quadruple the number of calories. So this is a little bit high, but I'll admit I eat these occasionally. Let's take a look at the ingredients. Whole grain rye flour, rye sourdough, oat flakes, whole grain wheat flour, whole grain oat flour, whole grain barley flour, yeast, salt, barley malt extract, sunflower lecithin, which is it is a lipid of sorts, but it adds, according to this, a trivial amount of fat. And they can, when the fat number is under a certain amount, they can list it as 0. So there's probably a tiny little bit of fat in here, but I'm okay with this. So this looks like this is a decent product. Now, as many of you probably know, my brother-in-law and son Rip has a company called Plant Strong. And so, by the way, I get no kickbacks on this. We don't make any, I'm not making any money on this, but I wanted to show you a product that's out there. If you want to buy it, great. If you don't want to, don't worry about it. So here's one of his plant-based chilies here. So let's take a look. We're not going to believe anything on the front, even though my brother-in-law made it. And I like to say I can trust him. So it says organic, it says non-GMO, it says low sodium, it says vegan. Looks pretty healthy. Let's take a look at the label. Total fat, 1 gram. If we multiply by 10, that's 10. That's very low fat. So out of 180 calories per serving, fits that meets our criteria. Sodium, 180 milligrams. So it's actually right at the 1-to-1 ratio. And I'm guessing that in order to make this chili tasty, I bet Rip had to put the maximum amount of sodium he could in there to make it tasty. And so to still keep his 1-to-1 ratio concept alive. And let's look at the ingredients. I won't bore you by reading all of these, but basically it's all decent stuff. It's all good stuff. Lots of different ingredients, but nothing that's scary. I don't know what silicon dioxide is. It must be like a preservative. All right, a recap. Calories from fat, we want to keep it under 25%. I showed you how to calculate that. Salt, no more than 1-to-1 ratio of calories to salt milligrams. Look for whole, cracked, sprouted, rolled, or stone ground before the word wheat when you're looking at those. Avoid any type of sugar in the first 3 ingredients. Anything ending in OSE, any ingredient with cane, juice, malt, syrup, or sugar in the title is a sweetener. It's that easy. So it's not that bad. And I'm happy to share this PowerPoint with Terry if he wants to push it out to other people, no problem. That's what the Esselstyn Foundation does. Now, part of the title of tonight's presentation was something about keeping it simple. And so I wanted to show you what here's a 4-day meal plan for our household. This is the type of stuff that we might eat in a 4-day stint. And of course, we repeat a lot of things, but you can notice here, we really are interested in keeping it simple. Even though Anne and Jane write these incredible cookbooks with hundreds of recipes, really when just Jane and I are home, and we are eating without anybody around, we keep it really simple to the point where we like to think of it as strategies, not recipes. So you'll notice for breakfast, we're having some version of oatmeal every single day, whether it's steel cut or regular. We're mixing it up, maybe throwing a few crushed walnuts on top. Maybe, we're topping it with lots of frozen or fresh fruit. And it's that simple. We just have oats every day. For lunch, we're having a stuffed pita pocket, maybe an open-faced whole grain sandwich piled up with whatever we've got around. Sprouts, maybe an avocado, shredded carrots, radishes. We're having leftovers, so we like to make batch cook leftover chili, have lots of stuff left over. Maybe we might have an open-faced dark rye sandwich with roasted red peppers and steamed kale, and maybe a little, oh my gosh, walnut sauce, which is in one of the cookbooks. And then for dinner, we're just eating bowls. We just pile whatever we are interested in eating into a bowl. Usually it's a grain, a legume, and then as many vegetables as we can get in there, whether it's a handful of arugula and some baked sweet potato cubes, a lentil chili, an Indian bowl, a Southwest bowl. We're just again making these big bowls. And then for snack, we might toast some pitas or maybe have a little avocado toast. That would be pretty. We don't eat a lot of avocado toast, but air pop popcorn or a bowl of cereal, and that's really how simple we keep it. All right. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Anne, who's been doing this for over 30 years, and she has a lot to share with you and some of the secrets that she's come across over the years and some traps that she's fallen into. And I want to make sure you get to learn more from her wisdom. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera here. And Anne, you are on.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Terry. Oh my goodness, this is exciting to have this great group of yours. Brian mentioned that we, my husband and I started this. Actually, my husband is the guy that we're all standing on top of on this in about 1983. And when we started, as Brian said, no internet, not particularly any cookbooks. McDougal was on the West Coast, but that was way far away. So we had to figure it out. And we did. I mean, we had a lot of bad meals, but we figured it out. But I want you to know that I feel really sorry for the people today who are starting to go plant-based, because it is a minefield of vegan junk food out there, and it is scary. And it is as unhealthy as probably eating the standard American diet in some cases, what people can do. And I want to just give you just a quick few examples, because industry has done such an amazing job of confusing people by altering the names of the products to make them sound lower in calories. They sound healthy. Sugary drinks are called flavored waters. Potato chips are called veggie chips. And of course, milkshakes are smoothies. So, as some examples, let me show you this one. This is organic garden veggie straws. Now, Brian gave you a wonderful talk on reading labels and ingredients, and I want to echo what he said. And in the long run, reading the ingredients is the key, because in this product, there is cane sugar, safflower oil, buttermilk powder, palm shortening, non-fat milk, and sour cream powder. Don't eat it. Now, here's something that is really, really tempting. It's Amy's Thai green curry. But look at the label and then look at the ingredients. And in here, as Brian said, anyway, I want to just go back a second. I want to reiterate what Brian said about coconut, because here is organic coconut milk. And I think this visually will help you understand why coconut products are so high in fat and to be avoided. 1/4 cup. Now that's a tiny amount. 1/4 cup of this is 14 grams of fat. And of that 14 grams of fat, 13 are saturated fat. Coconut, as Brian mentioned, is 92% saturated fat, more than butter and more than, I mean, it's crazy. So in this Amy's green curry, of course, the second ingredient is coconut milk. And then there is safflower oil, there is sunflower oil, there is cane sugar, and there is brown sugar. All of that in this, what really looks as if it should be just delicious and could have been. So read the ingredients. This is cauliflower crust. And I want to tell you that this has tricked a lot of people into thinking it is a perfect product. However, mozzarella cheese and egg whites are in this. So read the ingredients. Do not be duped by what is out there. And then the products that everybody that becomes plant-based is getting caught up in these two products. One of them is the soy, is the alternative meats. They are scary. Whole huge aisles and whole huge bins of these meats are in the grocery stores. I mean, it's scary. It can be like a chicken. It can be like, I mean, it's like crazy. And here, this is the Impossible Burger. And in this, it is soy protein concentrate, which is a highly processed, avoided anyway. There is coconut oil, safflower oil, and a lot of salt. So do not get caught up. They taste good. They are not healthy. They are not good for you. The only thing they're good for is probably the planet a little bit, but it's not worth your health. So avoid the Impossible Burger, avoid Beyond Meat, and avoid all of those alternative meats out there. Just avoid them. And this is Diet, the cheese. And this cheese is very popular. People eat it all the time. This is the mozzarella style. And of course, the only thing that can make up any of these alternative cheeses is some kind of oil. So in this one, which is probably the most common cheese that people are eating, is coconut oil and canola oil and a lot of sodium. So avoid, don't get caught up by these alternative products because there are so many wonderful, wonderful things out there. If you stick to the outside of the grocery store, you will have no problems. Once you get inside, you have to become a sleuth.
You mean the outside aisles?
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
outside aisles. Well,
don't go in.
even the outdoors is probably what you're gonna get in those shelves inside. So I just want to go through a few little products that we've found over the years that are crazy and that reading the ingredients makes a difference. One of the things that we use a lot is some kind of vegetable broth, vegetable stock. And I like the Kitchen Basics unsalted vegetable stock a lot, and it's quite widely available. And it's got good ingredients. So when a few years after I discovered this, Kitchen Basics came out with an organic vegetable stock. So I thought, wow, this is going to be really good. Well, this is why you have to read ingredients. In here, there is cane syrup, cane sugar, and molasses, and 470 milligrams of sodium. 3 kinds of sugar. Of course, it tastes good. So read the ingredients. And this is a really nice something that I've just discovered. And it's a premium vegan broth base made by Spice Leaf. And this has got just top ingredients, salt-free. So if you can find it, Spice Leaf, it's a nice alternative. But one of the best, and what I'm only using now, are all of these broths made by Plant Strong. If you go to plantstrong.com, you can get either the vegetable broth, you can get the mushroom broth, which I love when you're doing something with mushrooms, the sofrito broth, and the sweet corn broth. No sodium, and they are very nice and tasty. And you know, I kind of like these smaller little containers because I don't always use a whole one. So anyway, this you can get through Plant Strong and plantstrongfoods.com. And while I'm mentioning them, there are some really other things that are, I mean, it's so hard to find things that aren't loaded with sugar and salt, fat. And these are 4 of the products that we keep on hand all the time. For instance, this is their Firehouse chili. You can put it on top of a sweet potato, on top of a baked potato. It's great, or just plain. This is their Indian lentil stew. If you add some lime juice, it's delicious. This is a white bean chili, lovely. And this is a carrot chickpea stew. And this is one of my favorites, actually. So these are all nice to have on hand when you need something at the last minute and you just don't have anything, or you're so hungry, you need something to put on top of something else. That's great. Now, another area that is a real minefield is trying to find something that is not a dairy milk. And you've got to read the ingredients. There's just no way around it. Read the ingredients. All the rice milks that I know of have added oil, and you just want to avoid that oil. It makes such a difference, because once you let something come in with oil, then something else, and then suddenly that oil is back in your life. So if you're just tough about it, and you'll never miss oil. So Oatly has got both shelf stable and in refrigerated, but they have got about 4 different kinds of oat milk that they make. But only the one in the white container, and I just don't have space to get them all. Only the one in the white container has no added oil or other stuff. So if you're going to buy the Oatly milk, look for the white container. And in any other non-dairy milks that you buy, read the ingredients. It just makes a difference. Soy milk is great, but you read the ingredients, because some of them have got sugar, fat, oil added. So become a label reader. Now I want to show you this pile of things here that are all of the breads. One of the top places, and this is hard to believe, that one of the top places for sodium is in bread. And the one bread that is probably everywhere available, and sometimes in the refrigerated sections or frozen sections. For instance, it's at Trader Joe's, it's right available, not frozen or just room temperature. But is the Ezekiel. And if you're interested in no added salt bread, this Ezekiel low sodium one is that. And then Ezekiel also makes a sesame 4.9. It's great, and it has very little sodium. As this Ezekiel with flax, this is wonderful. Ezekiel also makes a sprouted grain tortilla. I keep these in our refrigerator and I always have them available. They're just wonderful for burritos, they're fabulous. And then there are other, Ezekiel also makes sprouted grain English muffins. Love these because they're just like English muffins. They open up, and they're so good. And they're just whole grains, everything you want to eat. They're sprouted whole grains. And then there is Alvarado Street Bakery. I like this bakery a lot. And this is a nice sprouted, no salt added bread. And here is Silver Hills, and they make a sprouted power squirrely bread, all whole grains. I recommend them highly. But read the ingredients on the bread you're buying and just try and avoid the sugar and the salt that's added and the oil. And then if you're looking for, there are all kinds of other whole wheat. This is whole wheat pita pockets. And then this is more of the tortillas. What about pizza crust? Sammy's Bakery makes a really nice millet and flax. If you have a problem with wheat, you will like this pizza crust a lot. You have to order this probably online unless you live in Orlando, because that's where it is.
Don't they also have a bun that's
They have-
gluten-free?
They have some other gluten-free products, that's right. So it's worth looking into if you have a problem with gluten. But my favorite pizza crust is made by Plant Strong. This is the Plant Strong, and it comes, believe it or not, this is the genius. It comes with a little packet of pasta sauce that's just the right amount to put on this pizza crust. And you get 5, I think, come together. And I just freeze them and I have them. And they're wonderful. And let me just tell you one little great trick about pizza. I mean, it's so easy to cook pizza, and then you end up basically eating a lot of dough with just a little sauce. Well, you got to load this pizza out. And I always start out cooking some kale or any kind of green, and then mixing it in with the pasta sauce, then putting mushrooms, onions, garlic, peppers, green peppers, red peppers, lots of stuff on it. Cook it. And then when it's all done and you pull it out of the oven, on top of that pizza, put a salad, put maybe just lots of arugula. And if you really like it and you're really clever, sprinkle that with a little bit of really nice balsamic vinegar. And you have a pizza that's just too good to believe. So that is, again, you can get that with plantstrong.com. Another area that is really important to try and avoid is when you are buying beans in cans. It is insidious, the amount of sodium that is in most beans. Now, yes, you can rinse the beans, but you only get about 40% of that sodium out. So when you're buying beans, just be a sleuth and get the beans that have no salt added. Here is some beans, no salt added. Here is 3765 black beans, no salt added. Here is Rhinesy, black beans, no salt added. Here is Cooners, no salt added, black beans. They are available, you just have to look and just be particular. But best of all is make your own beans from scratch. It's fun, and if you get so many, you can't eat them all at once. They're great, they freeze really nicely. Another area that is tricky is when you're buying any kind of tomato products, because almost all the tomato products have got a ton of salt added. sodium added. So be particular. Hansi chopped tomatoes are just great. They're just tomatoes. You don't need anything else. Now, this is a good product, but when you read the ingredients, there has been sodium added. So if they're side by side, why get this when you can get that? So read ingredients. And then, oh, and then I really like the San Marzano. You just have to be careful and look at the product, at what you're buying, but they do make them without sodium. So that's a nice one. And then this is just tells you some of the pitfalls with all these nice sounding tomato products. This is at ShopRite, and I have a big X on it. And it says diced tomatoes with basil and oregano. And in these diced tomatoes with basil and oregano, and I have to have my glasses on because there's so many things here. There is soybean oil, sugar, salt, and olive oil in just this. Why? And then look at this, contadina tomato paste. Okay, this should be really nice. It happens to be an Italian herb variety. Well, you got to read the ingredients because in here is high fructose corn syrup, salt, and you won't believe what I'm going to say next, Romano cheese. Now, who would think that there would be cheese in a tomato paste? So you've got to read ingredients. And I want to, just before I end, I want to give you a few little interesting, tricky things that if you're interested, you can find products. For instance, if you are serious about no sodium, West Bray makes a stone ground mustard with no salt added. And this is something that really shocked me. Payne baking powder has a featherweight baking powder that is sodium free. And when you look at the baking powders that are out there, 1/8 of a teaspoon of baking powder is 60 grams of sodium. Now, when you multiply that by the teaspoon that you normally use, there's a lot of sodium. So this is such an easy way that you don't even know that you don't have to have all that sodium. But let's say you need something for the taste. And there are some products, there's low sodium tamari that we like, but it still is high in sodium. And then this is another Sanjay, 50% less sodium. It's tamari light. It's a little less sodium than that. And this is Bragg's liquid aminos, which has just about the same amount of sodium at all three. But this one has something really great because it has this little squirt top. Didn't take the top off, but you just go like this, squirt, 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 and you get this little spray. So if suddenly you find your food is really bland and you just want to have a tiny little bit of something salt on it, this is a really clever, nice way to satisfy that. And then to satisfy taste, you can't miss on any of the Mrs. Dashes. One of my favorite Mrs. Dashes is their lemon pepper, but there's so many different flavors. And so look for those salt-free things that you can use that really enhance the taste of your food. I want 2 more things I want to cover. Brian, do I have time?
Yeah, 2 more things would be great.
Okay. Nutritional yeast, Brian mentioned, is something that is really enhances the feel and the taste of food. It often works on top of popcorn, on top of pizza, instead of cheese. It isn't cheese, but is very cheesy-like. If you put it on top of a casserole, you would think that you have got cheese on there. It also gives a wonderful smoothness to sauces and a thickness sometimes, even a little bit in a soup. So look for it. It comes, you can get it This one is Frontier. There's one by, there's not that, you get them in with where you get spices and things. It also comes in bulk and this is just a little bit, shows you what it's like. It's powdery and it's yellow and it does help, adds a nice color to things. So look into nutritional yeast if you don't know. And the best thing to me, nutritional yeast is when you're making mashed potatoes and you take Yukon Golds and get them all nice and soft, smash them. You could add just potato water or alternative milks. And then per potato, put a tablespoon of nutritional yeast and some garlic. Oh, so good.
All right, we want to do questions?
Wait.
Okay.
Before,
So, yeah.
there's just one other thing I wanted to talk to you about. For desserts, there's the Onana machine, which is wonderful. I recommend that everybody get that because you get soft serve. It's not expensive. You can use all those bananas that got nice, really too ripe. Then I just have discovered some of these freeze-dried organic raspberries. This was from Trader Joe's. Strawberries. They are just these products, nothing else. But read the darn ingredients because the mushrooms that are crisp sound good, not only have sea salt, but oil. So you've got to read the ingredients. And then here are organic beet chips, naked. Truly, they are just beets. Now, beside this on the shelf, I noticed beets with salt. Why get the salt? And then my last thing, and I say this with caution, because as we had, both Brian and I have mentioned, that coconut seems to have dominated everything, particularly because when trans fats went out, the coconut industry jumped in. You cannot buy any ice creamy things that are vegan that don't have coconut oil, something coconut in them. There is one ice cream product out there, and if you can ever find it, at least it has no added oil. Unfortunately, it has sugar, but otherwise, it is a surprising product, and it's called Arctic Zero. This one happens to be the cookie shake one. And it's, looking down here, it's 0.00000, and then there's 50 milligrams of sodium. It's amazing. And that score. So with that, I just want to say, hooray for all of you. I think plant-based eating is the way to go. No question about it. And I'm so happy that all of you are out there.
We can take some questions, Terry, if you want.
Great, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Ann. Boy, you covered a lot of ground and you have touched on a lot of things that I have never seen before. So I'm going to be, and thanks, Brian, for hopping in the chat box. So I'm going to be checking out a lot of this stuff. So as far as questions are concerned, I'm going to jump in with a couple real quick ones. First of all, I saw Brian on the menu thing that you had up there for the 4 days. A couple of them, in a couple of menus, you mentioned pita triangles, and but like pita triangles and hummus and pita triangles, and I forgot what else it was. Is there a special, Ann, is there a special like brand of pita triangles that?
No, you got to make your triangles.
No, but is there a pita though that you like?
Oh, well, I think you've got to look locally and see what is the cleanest one you can find. We have one, let me tell you here, and I'm sure, can't remember who makes this. Anyway, just look. But you know what? You don't have to use pita. You can use any kind. For instance, you know what makes great thing is to take the Ezekiel tortilla, that or corn tortillas are wonderful, and they are all really clean.
Now, do you bake those, or do you put them in a dehydrator?
Just cut them into the little triangles, bake them, watch them carefully because they burn.
Joseph's Bakery makes some healthy pitas you can order online.
Great. Let's see. Catherine asked, what are Bragg's aminos and are they okay? And yeah, I know you held up some Bragg's aminos there.
Yeah,
with the
they're,
Bragg-
they're okay. They're kind of a soy alternative. And they add a saltiness to a product.
Yeah, they're made out of soybeans and purified water.
Vegetable protein from soybeans and purified water.
Yeah.
Wow. Thomas asked, what do you think of the Kite Hill alternative cream cheese?
Oh,
I just think you gotta read those ingredients. And especially read the label because they are really high in fat. So if you are a heart disease patient, be really cautious. I would put them in the vegan junk food category.
It said, he says there's 0 saturated fat, no oil, but it has xanthan gum. How do you guys feel about xanthan gum?
that's just a preservative. Here, I'm looking up the
Kite Hill.
Kite Hill right now. I want to see what's in it.
I got tricked by it, but then and it's good.
It's very high in fat.
Yeah.
6 grams of fat in 1 serving. So I would be,
It's just not for people with heart disease.
yeah, I'd be careful. I mean, it's made with almonds, so
And I
also a lot of salt.
see Michael mentioned in the chat that Piggly Wiggly and Myers both carry Joseph's Bakery pita
Great,
and tortillas and lavash.
excellent.
Let me just see here. Do you guys do much in the way of bulk buying? You know, for your for grains, for beans, things like that. Are you buying them dry or in bulk, or are you buying them in canned or something like that?
Since it's just my husband and me now, I don't seem to be the huge bulk that I was when we had 4 kids at home. Brian is more bulk because he's got kids. Right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, we've spent we've at times bought things in bulk, but actually you can often get a better price. We have a whole presentation. Maybe we can do it in the future on plant-based eating on a budget, and a lot of that talks about how you can actually find better prices per pound in just buying the small bags, depending on where you buy it. Like Walmart has a in-house brand called Great something, I'm spacing it. But anyway, yeah, but we purchased, one time we bought a 50-pound bag of oats. Felt like a horse.
Sharon asks, is cocoa powder okay for making hot chocolate with, or is that too high in fat?
Cocoa powder, Ann?
Yeah, cocoa powder is all right because the fat has been removed, the cocoa butter has been removed.
Excellent.
But, you know, dark chocolate is just really high in fat. So you're better off with heart disease type person to go with the cocoa powder.
Do either of you have, Terry asks, could Ann talk about hidden ingredients in baby food?
Oh, you know what? I didn't bring it. One of the things that is nice to use in baking sometimes are baby food prunes. And the regular, not organic baby food prunes have just got prunes in them. And the organic baby food prunes, guess what they add? Tuna oil.
Holy mackerel.
So I mean, I think most baby food today has got to be pretty good, but just, I can only sound like an old record, read the ingredients.
We didn't eat a lot of baby food. We just gave our kids a lot of sweet potatoes and a lot of this stuff that we ate. Avocado, yeah, like we didn't buy much baby food.
Another question. I mean, Dr. Lenz mentioned there's great value. Oh, Great Value is the brand at Walmart.
Yeah, sorry, great value. Thank you.
And we're just about at 7:30 here. So what else was it gonna, oh, Plant Strong Food that's Rips.
That's Rips and it's wonderful. I mean, you can feel so safe with it.
Now, where is that? Is that sold in a lot of stores, or would you recommend going online?
It's out in the stores more and more. Whole Foods for sure has the broths and all the different chilies and stews.
Aren't they in Wegmans now?
And I think they're in Wegmans and they're just getting out there, but you can also go to plantstrong.com and see all what they have.
Excellent. So that, but yeah, those labels looked pretty clean.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think that I don't see any more questions here, and we're at 7:30. So I would say, first of all, thank you so much. That's an outstanding presentation. I'm going to mention our next monthly meetings, Thursday, March 9th at 6 o'clock Central Time. Our featured speaker will be cardiologist Dr. Kushik Reddy. If anybody would like to receive notice of this or other upcoming PB Now events are not currently on our list, just Google us at PB Now or pbnow.org. And once you're on our homepage, click the white Learn More button to register, and you'll begin to receive notice of our upcoming events. Also, remember, if you'd like to check out our past meetings, just go to the video library section on our website, or search, or just look for us on YouTube under PB Now or pbnow.org. You can go back and watch entire talks or skim through to the parts that you've got the most interest in. Thanks again to Ann, Brian, and Dr. Lieberman for sharing your valuable time tonight and your knowledge with us. Good night, and thanks everybody for coming. Whoop. Yes.
Every time you put something in your mouth, it's an opportunity to put in something even better.
That's a great thing to remember when we sit down to eat in the kitchen or in front of the television set, which we get into mindful eating. And we look forward, Ann, to seeing you again, and Brian, you again in November.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.